Come on. Yes, it is going. All right, we wait a few seconds. All right, hey everybody, you are here for the show, and it is the disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Remember, this is Ed's show. This is not anybody else's show. We are all here to learn and to share information, real information, not hearsay, not rumors, none of that bull. If you want to go and listen to hearsay and rumors and gossip, join a local church and join a sewing circle or something. But if you want to learn about being lawful or legal and the right way to do things, keep listening. It is June 23rd, 2018. It is a Saturday, and Ed, why don't you take it away?
Thank you. I thank everybody for joining us this evening. Anyhow, I wanted to bring some new information, but we thank everybody for joining us. We thank those who are sharing education along the way. I do have some information that we have received that we haven't put up yet that I'm working to get up. So as soon as we get that posted, we'll get everybody sent a copy and known. And so we are working on these things so that way it does better ourselves. And the main thing is that we have to start realizing what our potentials are. Our potentials are dealing with the court cases. How do we know what court cases? How do we know how to deal with them? Because, see, we know it's a joke. I mean, and that's the saddest part. I mean, people don't realize that your court system is not what you think it is. And most people think the courts are there to help them. They're not there to help you. They are not your friends. And as soon as you accept that these men and women do not care for you, they don't love you, they don't want your children, they just want to rape your children and want money. So all they want is rape, rob, and pillage. I mean, I watch a lot of these things happen along the churches. I watch a lot of these things happen along basically around the neighborhoods. And people go, well, we're supposed to have these rights. Well, it's like, that's the other point. Show me a right that exists. And that is what we are doing right now, is we're getting information out. I did get one letter out to the clerk dealing with asking them their positions and different information, which I'll read here in a minute. And this is the one thing that we want to get out to these tax collectors, to these judges. And then bring up dealing with the law. See, that's the one thing, that they have laws that they're supposed to go by. We know they're not going by them. We comprehend that this is what the truth is. But the bottom line comes down is that we have to continually filing on these men and women and start getting them to respond. We do get some response, and sometimes the response is running around in circles, and there's no actual sustaining structure to their response. It's like the one thing is that I put in a request dealing with the definition and definition of lawful money is. I have the state definition, I have the federal definition, I have the IRS definition, I have the comptroller's definition, but we want to hear from these men and women their definitions. And that is the main point of putting in an affidavit, a Freedom of Information Act, so that way we hear from our public servants. And that is the one thing, as soon as people can start getting that through their head and say we have public servants, we have elected and public officials, instead of it's the government's fault. No, it is not the government's fault, because look in the mirror. It's your fault, government. So this is the one thing I've been on the phone with a lot of people the last few days again, and everybody wants to come up with these terminologies. Like I said, we've got a couple of good people that say, hey, prove it. Let's see it in writing. We want to see it in writing. We don't want to see it the way it's coming out in an oppression. We don't want impressions. We want facts. And once we can start realizing that we're able to conclude on facts and the structure of these facts of what they're doing. And that's what our point is bringing this out. When you're asking a question, it's like I plan on getting comments. We do know the rights to travel, and this is the one thing I've been on the phone with many people on this. We know the Supreme Court what it says. But the point is that we have to get our senator, congressmen, put it in writing. And we need to have them put it in writing. Because otherwise, it comes down to the point when you get kidnapped and held for ransom by a domestic terrorist called a cop. Remember, cops only work for themselves. They do not work for the general public. And it is very interesting when you try to get this stuff stated out to the people, and you're trying to get them to comprehend that the public, the general public, you know, you have to realize the general public is not what you think public is. So this is the one thing that, you know, bringing these things forward. And it's like I've got letters that I am getting ready to put together to a few more military personnel in Oregon Territory. I got questions I'm going to be asking them and getting these letters out this week. I've got one letter that we're working on. We'll have posted up here eventually. That's the one I turned in to the county. But the other point is I got a couple more that I'm working on, and that is dealing with the state, because I want the state to come forward. I want them to start admitting your public employees. And that is the one thing that we have to realize, that these public employees have obligations. They're supposed to respond to us. We realize that that's their corporation duty, is to respond to us. But how do we get them to respond when they shut their mouths? Okay. Well, that means we have to figure out other ways of producing a response. And it does take a little time for these things to produce, to get out, and patience. And patience is some things that some of us really don't have, and some have it better than others. So, but anyhow, we want to get into dealing with we're still dealing with the rights to travel. We want to get this thing starting to be pushed out. I've got another letter that I'm putting together that I'll be sending out to the Oregon State House and Senate. And so we can get responses for that. I will send it out throughout Facebook, and other channels, so that way we can get other response. Hopefully we get more response from other people in other states and other counties in Oregon. But the frustration that we are having is like, we get a lot of people that want to talk, but nobody wants to do anything. That's the one thing that's the saddest part. Nobody wants to do anything. Everybody wants somebody else to have a miracle happen. Well, I hate to tell you, folks, when when you see it, let me know. Otherwise, miracles only happen most of the time in the mind. Once in a while, when one gets lucky. But I want to get into dealing with the one thing that I wanted to get into on the rights to travel, dealing with the Library of Congress. I put up an instrument that I sent out to people dealing with random licenses and vehicle registration, stop and declare unreasonable under the Fourth Amendment. And that's what I wanted to read, but now I got to find it. I thought I had it set up right here, but obviously I didn't have it set up where I thought I had it set up. But give me a minute. But I wanted to get into some of the stuff where it comes into one's right. And the one thing is how do you have a right when nobody's willing to enforce it? That's the saddest part, one of the saddest part we truly got going on today, because our elected and public officials or employees don't do their job. So the other point that I'm putting together some letters is questioning some of these elected and public servants on the right of employment. And that's the one thing that we all actually should be doing, is putting out letters dealing with the right of employment. They're not doing their job, so what's the point of their employment? And that's where we need to start standing up on this stuff. Realizing if they don't have a right to employment, then what the hell are you bowing your head to these men and women for? Yes, we know that they've shoved guns in our face. Yes, we've been through all this stuff. More than one man or woman has been through this, standing up on this and fighting on this stuff for their rights, our rights, universal rights. But trying to comprehend, because I mean, I've got the information dealing with insurance is not acceptable. I even got it where the structure, they admit that insurance is a fraud in Oregon, even by administrative rules. So getting this out. And then we got the Washington University Law Review, January 1979. And this is the Washington University Law Review that I have. I will post out on it right now. I'll get some of it posted on the internet here too, so people can follow or read it, save it for what they want. And that is the one thing that people do have to realize, that you have to save this stuff. You have to download this stuff. You have to make sure that you have it for your records. And that's the one thing that most people don't comprehend, saving information for your records. And putting them in order, getting them together so that way you have something. I mean, I'm getting ready to fight my situation again. They're going after, saying that I owe back money when they've taken it out of my disability 5 times now. So who do you report to? There ain't nobody. I mean, that's the one thing. Everything's based on a computer chip, and there's no intelligence. There's absolutely no intelligence what we got going on in this country. And everybody goes, oh, well, we want to use credit cards. Well, you use credit cards, you give up your rights. That's what people don't realize. Unless you're dealing with cash, the debt note, technically, you don't have a right when you deal with credit cards. Read your credit card structure. You give that credit card over to whoever is the consumer of that business. And see, that's the one thing that you have to realize, how the consumer of that business can control you. Most people don't comprehend that reality. And it really does suck, because, you know, we go out, we fight all these things, we're supposed to be able to protect our families, and then you're told, oh, you're not supposed to protect your family. You don't have a right. And we got men and women living this way. You know, like your right for your transportation, your right to a child. So this is the one thing that people say, well, we have all these rights. Well, you know, I always love it when people go, well, you know, the Bible gives me this right. Well, I keep asking people, where's the Bible's rights? Prove it. I haven't seen nothing from the Bible that proves that there is a right or there is a security or anything like that. Never have in my life at this point. So, I mean, when people sit there and go off on these tangents, right now our tangent is to get these administrative laws, to get as many people working on this as possible. So this way our structure becomes intangible with the circumstances of the future. And that is the one thing of whose future, what future, why future. So you have to realize, whose future are you fighting for? That is the one thing that amazes people. What future are you fighting for? What children are you fighting for? See, that's the one thing I have fun with people when they say that they're out there defending this or defending their children's rights. Well, I always like asking people, what children's rights are you claiming? See, this is the one thing that when it really comes down to is our rights. So when we get into these structures like, I want to get back into this thing on the rights to travel, this book is getting into the circumstances of the rights to travel. Now, we've got universities that's saying it's against the 4th Amendment and against the 5th Amendment. Now, I'm trying to get this stuff so I can pass it through on the channel here. I'm working on it right now. But the whole point is that unless you are working with one another to have your rights intact, you have no rights. And that is the one thing that is so sad, because everybody says we're supposed to be working together. We're supposed to be Americans for Americans. Well, right now we only see and we only know that there's a handful of Americans. The rest of them, they ain't Americans. They sold their soul. They don't care. They don't protect their children. And see, that's the one thing that sort of disturbs me and stuns me when all these people say, I love my child. Well, then why do you keep giving him over to the state corporation? Why do you file for your kids to have privileges instead of rights? I mean, it's like, what is that? Growing up, kids had to go to the lunch program. And if you didn't go to the lunch program, you were not entitled to food. But, of course, you weren't allowed to go outside and eat it or go out to the schoolyard and grab an apple off the tree. Oh, my God, you did that, you got chewed out. And that's the one thing that most of our schools until the 70s, 80s mainly, all had fruit trees all around them. All of them had fruit trees. And then all of a sudden, there's no fruit trees around. And then they got all these other gardens around, so there's no food being grown. And they're setting it up so if you don't pay for the privilege to buy food, you're not entitled to food. And I know that one because I'm since living that right now. I haven't had a chance. Normally I'm always out fishing or hunting or something to that point. And I haven't been out and done that in some time now. And that frustrates me. It stuns me that, I'm not out there participating, as I would call it, in Mother Nature. They were supposed to have the right to eat without paying the privilege. We're supposed to have the right to travel without paying a privilege. And so the saddest part is, who's working with us on these rights? So that's where I'm coming up, where I'm putting up some of these templates. I will be getting these things mailed and emailed out. That is a fact that I will be doing. So once we can get these things emailed out, and people can start seeing what we're putting together, because everybody needs to be filing on these things technically. If everybody filed on these things, we would have our rights to hunt, fish, travel. And so that is the point. How many people are willing to do that? How many people are willing to help the next man or woman out on these situations? Of course, it comes down to a right of each man or woman. So it does come down to a right turned into a privilege, or a privilege turned into a right, that some might say. But the bottom line is that how are we supposed to be able to travel without the fear of going to prison? We do have some men and women out there right now today who are traveling without any issues. And that is wonderful. We got some people out there traveling who are not going to jail for traveling. That is the best part about it. But how many people have gone to jail? How many people are sitting there willing to stand up with each other? I mean, I'm watching that right now today with people. And trying to get people to stand up together, that is a difficult thing, as we all know. We all know this for a fact. And it really disturbs me because I've got people I've worked with, talked with, like we all have. We've gone after them, trying to get things cleared up so that way somebody else has the right to travel without being infringed. But they don't want to work with each other. And then you got a lot of these foreigners that are in our country today that believe that their right to travel is more important than your right to travel. They believe their rights to family is more important than your rights to family. They figure they have a right to come into this country and to take over for you. And that's true. I mean, if you watch some of the mainstream media, it is interesting how these men and women will claim their rights over your rights. And this goes to the immigration side of it, because on immigration, we do have a right not to allow illegals or immigration into our country. And then when you get all these people crying, oh, poor me, it drives me nuts when people cry, poor me, when it ain't poor them. They have no concept of what that word means, poor me. And believe me, it frustrates me when I watch and see some of this stuff, because I'm dealing with what I'm dealing with. And so I know how they attack you. Anyhow, I'm putting some of this information up right now, dealing with the Law Center. And I'm just going to piece it in as I can go on the YouTube channel, so this way we can get in there so people can see some other points of view. And if people got other points of view, bring them together. I can't put them all. I got to wait till the show ends, and then I can put it all up on it, because I'm only allowed so many words to put in, 200 minimum or maximum. And for some of the links I got a little longer than that. But this is the one thing with the rights to travel, the rights to eat, the rights to have a child. There's another big issue that's going on that they're going after, and immigrations are out there going, well, you need to feel for these people. Well, I didn't bring them in my country. You know, and that's the one thing that, you know, is not being rude or disrespectful. You know, it's like these people are saying that we need to have rights and responsibilities for these people coming in just because they didn't come in legally. And remember, legally is the British terminology of the Roman Catholic Church. It's called Christianity, religion. I mean, and that's the one thing I was put up today, and I'll get that put up here tonight after the end of the show, the education show here. I'll get the structure for, what was the president's name? He's the one that did the Banking Act. And he has some very nice statements that he came out with that I want to be able to provide to the general public on this. So that way that Jefferson could have some of his own statements, what he said way back when, and that protected us. And people go off on these weird expeditions going, well, I got to bring this one up. Oh, what was that? 1776. They didn't have machine guns. They sure the heck did. Look up the Pickle, 1700. Fully automatic machine gun worked. And when people don't even do the research, they go by sound bites, you know. That's like the point where the Florida shooting, the attorney comes out for the sheriff that was hiding in the background. And now in Florida, they're stating publicly that the cops are not there to protect your life. So it's like, okay, well, seeing that they did that, if the cops ain't there to protect my life, why are we paying them? And so these are the affidavits that I want to be able to get together out in the next 10 days, questioning these are people's employment. We have a right to know why we are paying these people. What is the purpose of their employment when it's coming out in the Supreme Court? When it's clearly coming out in the Supreme Court that they don't have an obligation to protect you, your family, or anything. And then when they rape and rob you, they get away with rape and rob. See, that is the saddest part that drives me nuts, is that these men and women are getting away with harming people, and then if somebody else harms them, then they want to put them in jail and go after them. But it's okay for them, but not for somebody else. So dealing with the rights of travel, it's the one thing is getting these things autographed. I do agree with one gentleman that says get everything certified. And, you know, these men and women in the system are waking up that people are actually getting things certified, that way, by law, you could actually hold them financially liable. And some of them are waking up. There was a deal that came out from a federal judge in, I believe it was New Jersey, that was telling all the police department to make sure they have no land in their name, have no any type of personal property in their name, or no assets in their name, so long as that they are employed as a cop. And also, too, after 7 years, not to put anything in their name after 7 years, because the 7-year point of the legal term. So then that way it gets what they call that, it's out of date, it's out of time. And they know these things, that they do this stuff deliberately to you and I. And so when they're coming after our rights in this fashion, now we need to start going after them. I'm putting together a couple more affidavits I'm literally working on right now. I will have them done, several of these things done Monday and Tuesday, and I'll start mailing them out, and I'll make sure everybody else gets emails of them, and you guys could use them, modify them if you want to modify them. Excuse me, use them any way you want, because that's the whole point, is that if we're not working, exercising our rights, that gives us rights, not privileges. It's interesting. I love it. One guy's going, well, how drunk are you? Sorry, dude, I'm not drinking, and you come up with these terminologies, you're a moron. I've had 19 blown discs, 2 broken necks, spinal conditions, and if you don't know spinal stenosis and what spinal conditions are, you're mentally retarded individually. I get so disturbed when people go off on stuff they have no structure up. Oh, well, if you don't want it, I'll put the pickle gun up so that way you can see it. I get tired of people that, you know, they want to go off, they don't want to, they go off on tangents and they don't know what they're talking about. So I'll put it up. But it's interesting when somebody will sit there and accuse people of what they're doing. I've watched a lot of mentally retarded people get falsely accused of being on drugs when they weren't, because all these so-called drug people are mentally retarded. You know, that's the one thing that gets to me about these people that claim they know drugs. And I've been through the drug treatment programs on the law enforcement side and stuff. On both sides. I've seen the games. I know the games, and it's all for financial gain. So, but anyhow, I'm going to post the pickle gun up here in a minute for you folks so you can actually see it for yourself. So that's what gets to me, is that people don't do the research. They short themselves, you know, and then they want to go after and slander somebody because they don't know the truth. You know, there's a lot of things. I mean, oh, by the way, also, too, my neck is titanium. My throat is titanium, rests on titanium plates. You know, but see, people don't care about the truth. Lying to their children by some people is a standard. And I've witnessed that more than anything in life. Oh, Christmas, Halloween. You know, we're going to have a Christmas party. And if you look up the word Saint Nick, means the devil. That's what gets to me. People don't look at what the circumstances are, things. They go by stuff. They go by words and names that they don't even have a concept of what they're talking about. They get this off of the mainstream media that convince them of stupidity. And it is true. So anyhow, I'm going to put this up right now with the pickle gun so you can actually see the pickle gun is real. There's a lot of stuff out there that oh, you already got it up there for me, thank you. And so I'll get that up. Oh, okay, no problem, I got it. Okay, anyhow, we'll go off in a different direction. Anyhow, so, but the point is that I was trying to get this other stuff to run on the deal on the rights to travel with the Washington law structure, but I didn't get it up in a timely manner. So I have to take responsibility for that, because if I was able to get that up, that would be such a wonderful piece, and I'm going to go ahead and post it on my Facebook pages again and stuff, so people can actually take a look at this. And I'm posting a whole long series of it, and I will post this at the end of this evening on Oregon Trackers YouTube, so people can read this, and they'll have the administrative rules and statute, codes, and administrative rules on them. And remember, statute, codes, and administrative rules are foreign agent regulation, administrative pleadings. Remember, it's always a pleading, because you have to plead when you do the structure. And this is the saddest part, that people go through that and they forget what it's like. It's like when people do these things, and we're going to go put this ballot title together. And I always loved it when people go after, we're going to put a ballot title together, and it's like, how come you guys are not writing an affidavit? How come you're not producing an affidavit out to the general public? So this is the one thing that is very disturbing, that we should be putting together a universal affidavit, which we're going to eventually, later on this week, we'll have several of them posted up on Oregon Tracker, new.Oregon Trackers. Use them, alter them, get them out there. Because the more people we got getting them out there, the more it is waking people up, the more it is dealing with the circumstances of it. And that is our responsibility to do that. And when people sit there and go, it's not our responsibility, well, if you want to pass the buck off, fine. Please go to your country. Don't stay here. Because we're tired of people that are just abusing this country for their own personal gain. And it is very stressful when people sit there and use the circumstances for their own personal gain, not to protect one another, not to protect their children. And I mean, I see this one all the time in my county, my city. Parents will go off in different directions, and they don't even know what the other parent's doing. And that is another phase of traveling, because parents don't know what one parent is doing for the other parent. And so it comes into the rights of travel, and remember, your rights of travel come in the rights of free speech. But see, the thing is you'll be told that you don't have a right to free speech. And technically, if you go by these public servants, you don't have a right to free speech. And they're telling you the truth. But how come people are not honoring the truth? That is the point, that we all are not honoring our own truth when we speak it. And the ones who are honoring the truth, the other ones are trying to sit there and make a living off the other ones, because if they had convinced them their rights are not intact, that's how they get away with it. And it's like, I was talking to a gentleman earlier dealing with attorneys and licensing. Well, they get a bar card. They have no license. And then when you're told that you need to do this, question their authority. The biggest thing that anybody, and all of us that are involved in this, we all can tell you, question one's authority. Because if you don't question the authority, that is the point. Who's telling who the truth? So you have to question the authority. And that means anytime you get a traffic ticket or infraction, you want to question that authority of that public servant. You have to do that. If you don't question the authority of that public servant, aka judge, whatever you want to talk to him or whatever you want to say about them, that's the problem that we all are having today. Nobody is actually giving the proper information out. Nobody's sitting there standing arm in arm instructionally setting this up. You see people that are yelling and screaming, oh, we need this right. It's like we go back to the WTO, and I remember when that was going on live on the West Coast here, which is interesting. I watched their movie they put out recently, too, on it. But the WTO, I mean, the people stopped that. So the people stopped that. How come the people didn't go after the military courts? That was part of the WTO. Didn't anybody know the truth? Everybody stood up for something they had no concept of what they were standing up for. And that is what we're fighting on these issues. What are we fighting on these issues for that we're not doing? We're not protecting one another. These things have to be brought up in the circumstances of what, why, and how. And that's what you're supposed to be doing, is bringing these things up on the table. I mean, you know, I get a lot of people that ask me a lot of questions, like we all do. I bounce questions around with a lot of folks, as most of you know. And we do this. We bounce around knowledge between each other so that way we can put the pieces together of the puzzle. And without the pieces together of the puzzle, how are we supposed to have any future? See, that is the one thing that people don't comprehend, the future that people don't realize that they lose. Or the past that they lose. See, we lose on one thing or another unless we stand up for the rights. And today, a lot of people say, well, it's just simple. And I've had people literally recently tell me it's cheaper to pay the fine than it is to fight it. You know, and I said, okay, that's cheaper to pay the fine. So you pay a $275 fine, and you're making $10 an hour, so you worked 8 hours, so $80. So you're still out. So in other words, you're looking at losing 2 days of work to pay for 1 day that if you went in and actually knew how to fight it and fought it, you'd be all right. But that's the other point. People do not have the strength to fight things, apparently what people are saying, which to me I find interesting, because if you don't have the things to fight, and to fight for yourself or fight for those around you, you know, we call it we the people. Where is the we the people? Where are the we the people? Who are the we the people? And that is the one thing too. Who are the we the people? You know, when are we going to start standing up together? And that's the one thing that other people are going about, you know, with free speech. And I have fun with these free speech talk shows that do all this stuff. Everybody wants to whine and cry. But who are willing to stand up to do something about it? That is the point. And you try to get people to stand up, and everybody says, well, we don't want to stand up. We just want to whine and cry. We just want to bitch and moan and groan. Well, I mean, it's interesting when you got these other people that are going off on, you know, free speech. Well, okay, then how come we're not standing up together on free speech, having an affidavit filed, and going after them in the media on it? So that's the way I'm looking at things. And we got people that are starting more and more stand up. We're putting together more and more affidavits ourselves to get out there. And most people ain't doing nothing. All they're doing is out there whining or crying, or out there, oh, I'm a religious group, so I need a 501c3. I need money, money, money. Well, it is sad when people are going after money, when it's just money. Because what is the structure of money? And that is the one thing that people don't comprehend, what the reaction of money really is. And it is interesting that these things are going on in this fashion. And I do know it, and I do see what's going on. And it is funny when you watch these things that are going on and nobody's paying attention to what the circumstances are. And, you know, I'm amazed. I mean, I'm amazed right now. I got talk shows that are popping up around me, and a lot of them are going off from the conversations that, you know, we've already discussed prior to their shows, which is okay. You know, but what gets to me is that when people sit there and they don't pay attention, and then they want to whine and cry and go after somebody instead of standing for somebody. That's the other thing that sort of disturbs me. You get more and more people out there that want to go out there and say they want to fight and defend somebody, but they don't go out and fight and defend anybody. And we are personally dealing with that today. We got a lot of people that says that they're out there to fight, protecting children. Where are they protecting children? I haven't seen it, and that's the one thing. I walk around in my area. I pay attention to what goes on in the street corners in my area. Oh, and I ain't got that big of an area on the Oregon coast here. And you're watching the same thing where kids are running around Disneyland and, you know, all these musicians and all this stuff that are mind altering. We do have some good musicians out there. That is true. And that is the one thing that we do have these things that are happening. And so when you have a right to travel, or you have a right to petition, and you have the right to stand up on these things, I guess I'm being... Oh, okay. Gotcha. So, yeah, no, I know that, and I've been watching what's going on from the other channels that are back and forth right now, too. And it is interesting because, you know, it is interesting how we are to protect ourselves. And that is our right to protect ourselves. I mean, I'm watching all these other talk shows right now that are going on, and I don't see one of them coming up with a solution compared to what we are doing ourselves. At least the people on this talk show, we are coming up with solutions. We are putting this stuff out. We are becoming more effective on these things. We're getting information. So, and then we've got these other information and channels that people just don't care. You know, and it is interesting when you got these people that want to sit there and run around in circles, and they're not accomplishing anything. You know, I mean, that's the one thing with the rights to travel. At least I've got some movement going. I'm getting ready to put more letters out. And that's the one thing we need to start hitting, at least in the Oregon Territory, for the senators and House and congressmen to start getting nailed on their job positions and stuff like that. It is our responsibility to nail them in their job positions. It is our responsibility to educate the children. And see, that's the one thing that you got all these people out there going, will say different things. And yes, we do know we got a lot of trolls out there that don't even comprehend what the truth is. I mean, I bounced around a couple things that are going on, and I find it interesting that a couple of these other talk shows just started up again tonight. And, you know, I mean, I get the situation, what's going on, because we got a lot of people out there who don't want the truth out there. They don't want the truth. And so when they're not getting the truth out and they're fighting with each other, you know, it's like we can get into the arms talk, you know, Delaware, we're going to take your guns away. Everybody's screaming and panicking. Hey, folks, how about start filing criminal charges on these men and women? You know, it's your responsibility. And I talk to a lot of people, too, on different talk shows and stuff. Oh, well, we don't have time. But you have time to whine and bitch and moan and groan. but you don't have time to defend the children. You don't have time to defend your neighbor. So these are things that we are actually living with today. I mean, and it gets to me. You know, we got all these people that are doing these other talk shows out there, and not one of them are out there participating to stand together. Everybody wants to whine. And at least I can say one thing with us, we are not whining. We're getting the truth out. We got things that are responding. We are starting to get responses from public servants. And once we get better responses, and we start getting a response, because we know by law that if they refuse to give us information, they're supposed to be penalized. But then the other point comes down, who's going to penalize them? Hey, there's a concept when you got criminals running criminals. And that is the one thing that really disturbs me. I get tired of these people saying, I'm honorable and I don't do this. And I watch more and more people do more criminal activities when they say they don't do what they claim they're doing. And this is the other point. You know, everybody wants to whine about immigration. Hey, who cares? If I come into your home and tell you how to live, you ain't going to put up with it. And so we got these people coming into our country, and we're supposed to put up with it. We're supposed to let them rape our children. Believe me, they rape your children. I have dealt with hundreds of rape cases from immigrants on the West Coast here. And the courts say, oh, we can't do nothing. I watched even an immigrant who raped a 12-year-old girl walk out of the courtroom 10 years ago, walk out of a Lincoln County courtroom raping a 12-year-old child, and the judge says that was acceptable, basically. You know, these judges, man, they have, and don't give me biblical stuff. The Bible doesn't mean nothing. If the Bible actually meant something, it would work. Now, men and women have to work. We have to put this stuff forward. Now, I hate to say it, folks, but we're past the point of, oh, pray to God. We're past that point. And then when people sit there and they go off on these tangents and they go, well, democracy, we're a democracy. We are not a democracy, people. Look the word up, democracy. Rape, rob, and pillage. That means they have the right to do whatever they want to you. I mean, you know, we're in a nation of distress. We have more homeless people in this country since Obama took office. And, you know, people want to go off on this stuff about Trump. Well, come on. What about Trump? He's got more employees out there than anybody else. So that is the one thing, is that this country is slowly coming back together. We don't know which direction it's going because the people is not responding. Everybody wants a free life. And that's the point. And life is free. And that will tell you that life ain't free. Life doesn't do this. Life doesn't do that. And it's hogwash. And that's the one thing that people don't get on this. That they don't get how the truth works. They don't get the structure of life. You know? And so I've been through this. And you've been through this. And so what are we going to do? And that is the point that we need to start defending these children and you, ourselves. Because we're not getting any younger. We're not getting any sweeter, nicer, whatever you want. Most people are getting more miserable, bitter, because of what's going on. You see it. You see it in people's attitudes. You see it in people's directions and conversations. And so it's our responsibility. So when are we going to be responsible? That is the main point. When are people going to start being responsible? Some people are responsible. Not everybody is. So when people start being responsible, and so it's like it's been one of those days of all the circumstances of what's going on. And so it's bringing these points forward, bringing these facts forward. We know that we have the rights to travel. Now let's make sure that we do have a right to travel. And that's collectively between us and all of us. And so that is the one thing. When it gets into these administrative rules of violating your 14th Amendment rights, your 4th Amendment rights, and everybody goes, I got rights. Well, what rights? How come you're not standing with somebody else next door or arm to arm protecting somebody else's rights when they were getting hauled off? I mean, I've had guns shoved in my face, hauled off in front of people. Did anybody do anything? Oh, they just turn around and walk away and go home. Oh yeah, we're gonna stand by you. And then when you're standing by yourself, you're the Lone Ranger. So I mean, it's really sad when people like this happens, and it happens to us. All of us are going through this to a degree. Some of the same. And then we do have some very honorable elected and public servants that are standing up. But also, too, with these elected and public servants that are standing up, you have to stand up, too, with them, beside them. See, that is the one point that people are not comprehending, this truth of what a right is. A right is a member of, a right is just a right. It's your right arm. It's your arm. So you have a right to raise that arm. So how come people are not raising the damn arm and standing up with each other? See, that's what disturbs me when people are not standing beside each other. Everybody wants to have a say, but nobody wants to stand up. And then when you got the men and women who are standing up on these rights to travel, on these circumstances, you have a lot of other men and women that are not standing up on people's rights and for people's rights. So what are we supposed to do here? How are we supposed to solve these issues? And we have solutions to solve these issues. We really do have issues to solve. But the main point comes down to is that we need to start doing this. Now, I'm getting templates out with a couple other people. We're going to be getting these things motivated. We'll get them shipped out, and we expect other people to do the same. We expect you to do the same. Well, I mean, and this is the one thing, I'm not going to bow my head to religion. This country is not a God-forsaken religion country. Read the foundations of your treaties in this country. It says nothing about God. And it talks about natural law. And see, that's the one thing that disturbs me when everybody comes up with foreign religions. We got enough foreigners we deal with in this country. And everybody wants to go with foreign religion. What about American religion? Native law, native structure that our forefathers put in place to protect us. And then the natives put in place to protect us from the foreigners that came to this country that aided in writing the Constitution. Now we could go off the Constitution as this contract. It could be that contract. It could be under commercial commerce, as some are trying to allude today, until it was changed in 1963 under the Administration Act. The Administration Act was 1940. The 1963 universal, commercial codes. You see, we didn't have a lot of this stuff. It's like I was talking to a gentleman earlier today dealing with, what is that called? The post office. Zip codes didn't even really become effective until 1947. And then zip codes weren't even really passed around until 1971, if you look on the administration structure of zip codes. See, they have all this stuff written down, and that's the point. People don't read this stuff. They just do what they're told. And if people actually read a lot of these structures, paid attention to these things, we wouldn't have the problems we are having today, especially with the children. You know, these kids are brought up today with no manners. They don't care. Their parents didn't care when they brought them up because they raised them up a way so that way they could do anything they want. And that's what they're getting away with because even their parents were raised to get away with what they wanted. You know, oh, I had a rough time. I had to walk 5 miles to school. So did I. Grow up. Quit whining. It didn't bitch to me to walk 5 miles to school when I walked to school. And also, too, I looked at it back then. Hey, the Great Spirit gave me a thumb. I put my thumb out, I get a ride. See, there are solutions to the circumstances of this. When people sit there and say how they had life rough, I would say most of those people didn't have a rough life. And then those who have had a rough life, you know, those are the ones that we need to take in consideration and to work with them and help them out. And some of those men and women are, you know, stable at this point. They were smart enough to figure out to become stable. And this is the one thing to bring the attention up. And this is the other point, too, that another gentleman now is starting to run off on the circumstances with the oath to the sheriff since I brought it out. And now everybody, that's good. People are starting to run with it. I'm glad to see it. So, and that's the one thing that we all need to start doing this, bring it out and start doing this. Going to the public servants and bringing it out. Why are we so bashful for not standing up on these circumstances? That's what stuns me. I just cannot believe that we are not standing up on these circumstances the way we need to stand up on them, if that makes sense. And it's our responsibility. You know, if we're not responsible, how are we supposed to do things? I am on, ain't I? Okay, I presume I'm on.
You're on, Ed. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I heard you now. I just switch phones. But anyhow, it's like now I got another gentleman just put out an email today on the stuff that we've been talking about off and on for the last few weeks. He just emailed it out to the Department of Justice, to the State Attorney General, U.S. courts, and going after the sheriff's oath of office. And that's what I'm getting ready to have emailed out too. You know, out to the oath of office for the sheriffs. And so we start doing that. We get more than one man and woman out there sending their stuff out to get, you know, responses back. They got to respond back to one of us. And at least the one thing is that, you know, more and more people are out there getting this information out, and we're working together. This is how we're going to change the future. Praying ain't going to change the future. Actions are going to change the future. And so we've got the actions moving. Now how are we going to determine the actions to protect the future? So when we get the other part out with the sheriff, and once I go over this other associate's information on what he just sent to the sheriff and the Department of Justice, and we send it out to 20 people, I'll share that with, I'll copy that and share his information out with everybody too, so they can see that, you know, it's not just me, myself, and I, or a few of the others that are on this line with us that are just doing it. There's more than one man and woman doing it. People are starting to speak up, stand up, and they're getting it, and it's getting people collectively to do this. And we do have one gentleman that keeps telling everybody to get it certified. He's pushing a lot behind the back door on this stuff. And it's the one thing that to make sure that people get to certifying this stuff, making sure that people have their say. Because if we're supposed to have free speech rights, then let's act on it. Well, I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, I've got, like I said, I'll get these other letters out this week. I got one that I'm going to be sending to the governor's office too, and I'll be finishing that up probably later on tonight and getting ready to send that out Monday because I got a couple other questions that I got to ask other employees of their job description. And that's the one thing too, is that when you do email out these things, please always include House Resolution 192. Just throw it in there. We actually have the certified copy from the Library of Congress. You know, we need to know that truth of that point, if that's real or not. And why would the Library of Congress have it registered, filed in Library of Congress under the Bankruptcy Act of 192 that no debt could be paid and we're supposed to write off our water, electricity, and food bill as the alleged debt for Americans, and those debts do not go to foreigners, elected and public employees, because that's how, when the Bankruptcy Act went in, when they created the de facto reserve note, that's what they put the reserve note in, so that way they have exchange back and forth to keep their structure going. You know, their paper structure going. And it's like we know that real money is gold and silver or barter. That's what real money is, gold, silver, or barter. You know, the Federal Reserve note, it even tells you on it, it's a promise to pay. Doesn't mean nothing. We have a lot of faith in that, which in a sense, and everybody keeps going, well, I hope the banks fail. I hope the banks fail. Well, folks, let me tell you something. Unless you got that pile of gold sitting in that back room, and the banks, let's say the banks fail tomorrow, how are you going to eat? You go out and shoot a deer or an elk, you're going to get shot by a cop. See, people don't think when they do a lot of things. They don't think about how we're going to survive. I mean, I talked to Department of Fish and Wildlife members, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana, mostly Oregon almost on a regular basis. But I go to these scientists and I ask them the questions of what's going on. And they appreciate it because, I mean, there might be something I might know that they weren't sure of, vice versa. It does bounce around. But we need to educate ourselves on our food resources. Because right now we've got Fukushima leaking more radiation. They're supposedly dumped the reactor into the ocean. So that's having an effect on your food. And don't forget, we got Hanford up in Washington on the Columbia River that is severely leaking in the Columbia River. And King 5, Channel 5 News up in Seattle, Washington, did an hour and 40-minute series on how bad the radiation is in the Northwest from that. Oh, yeah, we're going to bury it in concrete, like Lars Larson would say. You know, Lars Larson, you know, we want progress. We need jobs. You know, it's like, well, you know, we could use some jobs, but when we got these things that are terrorizing the children and not getting things accomplished, it is sad. We're living these things today that we're going through. So, like I said, the number one solution that we have batted around ourselves, coming up with other men and women, is putting up these affidavits or these little notes going back and forth. So we want to question their job. We want to make sure every letter that even that you put out yourselves, I do recommend or suggest, and I don't like to recommend anything because that's a liability issue of words, but I do recommend that if you do put it out, put in 1938 Foreign Registration Act, put the law in it that says every attorney, every judge, every public servant who is not registered goes to jail. Put it in there. And if they say, well, it doesn't apply to me, yes, it does apply to them. See, they can lie all they want because you have to remember a police officer, pastor, reverend, preacher, teacher, they all lie for their paycheck. I mean, it's sad today where, you know, everybody's lying for their paycheck so that way, you know, it passed the buck along and we don't have to admit to anything. We don't have to take responsibility or liability. And that's the saddest part of what the children are living today because they see this. And then you wonder why the children are out there doing the stuff they're doing today. You know, it's bad enough when we grew up and we used to sneak a cigarette, or once in a while. Of course, we grew up in the time, at least I grew up, and some of us grew up around the time where, you know, they didn't have basically a bar limit or age limit in the bar. They had an age limit. They always had some type of limit, but nobody ever gave a hoot unless you created a ruckus. Most of the time, you know, I remember in the late 60s and 70s myself personally, and early 80s, that, you know, if the kids weren't raising heck, hey, sometimes you get flipped a drink, so long as you didn't make a fool out of yourself, you were all right. And it's keeping cold responsibility, earning your right and your placement in the general placement of people, you know. And so without us doing that, what future are we sitting on? So, but anyhow, we're going to get these letters pumping out this week. I'm going to, like I said, I've been working on them the last couple weeks. I got one out. We'll get that one posted up. I'm going to get the other ones posted up here that I'm working to get out on the sheriff. I do plan on getting a couple set out to a couple of state representatives and House members. And so, and then one thing, I did get a response, like I mentioned last week, from Gumberg office dealing with the rights to travel. And they're like, well, how are we enhancing your rights to travel? Well, I got to go back and get that email and respond to that this week, which I will respond to this week, and get that to Representative Gumberg, because if they're saying that they're not enhancing my rights to travel, I need it in writing so I could jump in my covered wagon and go fishing. I mean, you know, I'm sitting here like, you know, told if I travel or do something, I'm not allowed to feed myself. And I mean, at least right now, I mean, I could be fishing. At least I know areas I can go out and get, you know, fish, no problem. You know, and I don't like the, you know, reservoirs. I'm talking, you know, I live right near the ocean, you know, even though it's contaminated. But we still get rockfish and stuff like that off the jetties. Yeah, and that's the one thing that people got to realize when they go through this and they get told, well, we're almost running out of food. We have to limit food quotations and the fish quotations, and the fish quotas need to be redone in the state. People, quit buying into this bullshit. They're doing this to you so that way they can have the commercial industry run you. They're telling you that if you don't pay the privilege of life, you're not entitled to life. And that's exactly what the fishing industry is telling you right now today. And you got to remember, I mean, with Terry Thompson, you know, one of the fishermen here on the West Coast says, we fishermen feed more people than you feed yourself. So, and they've actually clearly stated, you don't have a right to feed yourself. We go out and get the food for you. So we go out and get the food for you. It's safer and better for you, because if one of us go down, you're not losing your life. They come up with these ridiculous, stupid stuff, the way I look at it, because everybody's done that for hundreds or thousands of years. And now they're trying to turn it into, what was the most humiliating thing I heard Jeff Sessions say? Oh, yeah, I couldn't believe it. You know, oh, you know, God gave you the government, so the government runs you. So honor God. What the hell? God could burn if that's what he's telling you, that God is the government and you have no rights, no nothing under Romans 13.4. I mean, the government is not the God. God is not the government. God was not founded by the government, and the government was not founded by, you know, sorry to say it, folks, but the government was not founded by Jesus Christ or God. It's not realistic. God had nothing to do with it until the last 100 years on the West Coast. Most of the time, until we got the computer age that we've had in the last 60 years, and progress of teletype and all that since the late 1800s, communications, I mean, we wouldn't know half the stuff we got to know today. We wouldn't be putting the pieces together of what our elected and public servants are truly doing to us, because everybody be out trying to make a living, which most of us are doing. But you don't have time to pay attention to the truth. And now people are waking up to the truth. Is how do we handle it? What's the responsibility that we have to do, not only for our children, but for what's coming up, the future that we're dealing with? And if we don't start protecting our rights to travel, stand up, and start getting these things in writing, I mean, that's the one thing that people don't realize. And I've had people say, well, the government, I don't know why you argue and yell at the government, Ed. They can't do nothing. They are doing something. They're taking your rights away. They're saying this.
If I may?
Go ahead.
Which government?
Good point. That is a good point. Yes, which government? And so that's the other valid point. Which government are we being told? We got government that we're being told by the corporation, the United States corporation. We've got state government that says the state government has authority over the federal government. We have the religious groups that are saying that their government is over our administrative government, and their religious government is more important than our Constitution rights or man and woman's rights. That's the one thing. You're right. Which government are we talking about? So it's putting it in these affidavits, putting it in writing, and let's work it and narrow it down. See, we are working and narrowing this down. We are getting some responses down. We are getting this stuff posted, but we need to make sure that we're getting more posted, and we need to make sure that people are working with one another and figuring out which government that they're claiming. I mean, we've got one side that is saying that, we have the right because we're flying the flag. Well, the flag is a military flag. It's not an American flag, and technically, if you go back to the original flag that we're flying today, that went into what was that called? I'm trying to brain for it. Buffalo Bill was at the slaughter of Wounded Knee. And then we have foreign government that comes in and destroys us, and then people are still backing up the foreign government that destroyed man, that try to wipe, the natives off the face of the earth. Now they're trying to say that they're wiping the white men off the face of the earth with bullshit. Technically, if you're doing that, if you go by the technicalities of it, we have more colored people. Doesn't matter which color you're thinking of, because there's more than one color. But we have colored people that are fading off in the woodworks today that are becoming extinct. The white people ain't extinct. I hate to tell you that. The Mexicans ain't extinct. The Chinese ain't extinct. When they come up and they put all these things in there telling we got the government, this university says that. And that's the one thing, when a university speaks, remember, they're speaking to you as a government body. And so that's the valid point that the producer brought up. What government? And so these are the things that, we're trying to clarify. With my letters that, we got to put in the United States for America or United States Corporation, because I do that in my writings anyways. I write in United States Corporation, because I want to know the separation when they send something to me. So when we start putting this in and writing this up, that it's the United States for the corporation, or if it's the United States for we the people. And trying to get this stuff so we can start getting clarification, because we want to make sure that these men and women put their John Henry on the dotted line, and we want to make sure that they're liable for their positions. And this is the one thing. It's like in Lincoln County and a lot of the counties in the state of Oregon, they're self-insured. There is no insurance on these companies. Literally, no insurance. And so they say they can get raped and robbed and pillaged because this is the point. You're not suing the men and women in their homes. Cop does something wrong, you sue the man in his home or the woman in her home. And then, I just read another case that's being filed for $80 million on an assault case for a guy that was assaulted. Is he going after the men and women that were part of the assault? No, he's going after the corporation. How come he's not going after both? You know, and then when I was talking to him, the terminology came out in the conversation. His attorney advised him it wouldn't be wise to go after both. So when he told me, well, his attorney in this, I figured, well, that's time for me to go, because, you know, when somebody tells me that they're going in that direction, not taking both sides or listening to both sides, but, you know, he's putting more weight on his attorney's side than it is reading what he's got in front of him. That's where you just have to walk away, because you're not going to put yourself in a sling, because, you know, we've already watched that, what's happening with the Bundy situation and Muller Park and all that. And don't forget, Muller Park is owned by we the people. It's not a BLM property. And I even sent the information on. It was signed over to the state of Oregon people in 2006 through the Secretary of State, and that was done in 2006. It's not a BLM property. But that's the point, that, you know, these guys, when you try to give them the information, which I did give them the information, and they're like, well, what does that mean? Don't you realize it's not a BLM property? They lied. They got more. You got them for this. You got more charges that you need to file on them personally. You know, because they threatened your livelihood. They threatened your lives. So you need to go after them personally. And it's interesting because people go, well, I don't want to deal with that. It's more headache and hassle. And let bygones be bygones. Well, then when they come back after you and they start doing through phase 2, you know, and people don't realize they're gonna go through. They already went through 4 phases with them. You think they're not going to try to come up with another one? They're still trying to justify $500 million spent in the state legal system of legal fees. And if that gets filed on, which I'm going to be bringing up next week, because I'm thinking about, there should be a collective deal to file on them on that. Individually file. You don't want to do a class action filing or class action suit. Because when you do a class action, all of it can be dismissed at once. And that's the one thing that is trying to get some of these people to comprehend. I mean, I'm trying to get the 2 of these water work groups, including the one up here in Portland, PDX Water Group, trying to get them to understand or comprehend, if you sue the board members for the damage, what they've done in the water structure in the area near the airport, they're liable. And I personally watched it for 35 years myself. I mean, I lived around the area up there off and on for 35 years. I witnessed what they're going through, but nobody wants to stand up. You know, or then I hear this, oh, we got to hire an attorney. And I've watched these groups up there myself over the last 15 years, spent $75,000 on attorneys and still got nothing. So it is working together, learning how to file these paperwork with each other, listening to one another on one point or another. You know, we have to go after them legislatively through their administrative rules. And when we start proving them, it's like when I get the other letter out going after their positions, their job security. I want to know their job descriptions. I want to know their insurance bond company. Please provide your insurance bond and statement. And I still got to put one of those letters out to the county. I will be putting one out to Lincoln County commissioners, because I got another letter going out to them, because I'm still been asking for their, mission statement. You know, so I got to put another letter together and get those out. And so I want their mission statements. We also be going after the local county commissioners, the local sheriff, and get the mission statement. Go after the local courthouse, because see, we didn't have a jail in Lincoln County until 1994. We didn't have a jail here. If you got caught speeding, they had to take you to Salem. So people didn't get written for traffic tickets and speeding 24 years ago at all. Everybody drove out here without licenses and insurance. You know, I mean, that was the one thing. If somebody got seriously injured, they would take them. But otherwise, they didn't give a shit. If you rolled your car down the ravine, too bad, too sad. People had to be responsible to tow their own car out and take care of their damaged property. You know, and then when they try to go after you and say, well, you damaged a tree, excuse me, trees grow back. You know, you can't damage property that we, the people, own. When it comes to public right-of-ways and lands, technically we own those. That's not for the corporation to own. You know, I don't care what the Hudson Bay Company might want to tell you. Hudson Bay Company only has a contract for their structure. Doesn't go outside of their contract. Doesn't mean I can go to another state and shove that contract down somebody else's throat and tell them they're going to live that way. And we've been pushed that way for the last 150 years. You know, oh, this company says this company says that. The companies don't have rights on land or property. And I've even provided the federal banking acts and laws that the banks can't own property. Government can't own property. You know, and if you're claiming to be we the people of the government, we the people of the government can't own property. The only one who can own property is private men and women. It's in their own books, their own structure. So that's what we need to start reading and paying attention to and start going in this direction. And I do want to thank all the elected and public servants who are actually out there working with people. I've talked to several in the last week. Really nice people that come through. I've had a couple that have sent me some information I haven't had a chance to review, but I was surprised that they said, hey, we'll send you that. I have this. I'll send it to you. And I'm like, you what? You will? And it's like, I got it, so I saved it, and I haven't had a chance to review it. But some of these people are realizing that they know their situation. I mean, it's like I talk to doctors and stuff all the time when I go in for my heart monitors and all the stuff I deal with, you know, my lungs and heart that I've been dealing with the last few weeks. And, you know, and it's like these guys know about the birth certificate bond. They know it, and they're like, yeah, we appreciate what you're doing, Ed, to keep the kids, because that was the one thing I wanted to figure out how to make sure that my kid could not be liable in that direction. I've had two doctors tell me that. I've given them my thoughts and my direction, and they never thought about it that way, and they said, you know, you got a valid point, which that made me feel good when you got people in that position that has the authority basically to screw a child's life over by the quill of a pen. So it is one of those things of looking at the circumstances of what it is and why and how. So we have the solutions. We're putting the solutions together. All of us have been working on these solutions. Now we're starting to put them together. We're going to be putting a lot more stuff up. We have one gentleman that has been sending us some information. We're going to be starting to get that up for that so people can look at that. We want people to start putting their thoughts and opinions out here. If they think something else could work, let's work on this. Because, see, this is the one thing that you have to realize. This ain't my country. This ain't your country. This is our country. So we have to work together on these things. And you get all these people that are all about me, and then you're watching why people are failing and the structures that are falling around the world, and then you're wondering why, what, why, and how. And that's the problem we are seriously dealing with. We are seriously dealing with that today on these circumstances, and how do we solve this? How do we solve that? So we do have the issues on the table. We are moving forward with these things. I'll be getting these other templates out here. They will be up by next week. I'll have them put on all the United States for America elected and public servants oversight. So I'll have it put up on the Civil War 1866 lawful bloodline Americans. We'll have it put up on the Recall Kate Brown and on New Oregon Trackers on the Facebook site. So people can sit there and they got it. We'll make sure it's passed around. I'll get it emailed out to people too. You know, because that's the whole point. We start getting these things. It's like the vaccinations. The people are starting to stand up. We just got another confirmation with the FDA. Just put out a deal 3 days ago how vaccines are killing people. I'm still amazed that they actually put that out by the FDA, but they are. So, and they're realizing this. So people are standing up. We've got to change that. And then how do we solve the problem with the people who have been harmed? Well, some we can, some we can't. So it's just the way it's coming together to put the pieces together to see how it flows together. So that's where we are today. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for anybody who'd like to bring a new topic in or throw in their thoughts. And so, you know, we've got to keep this thing moving so it is moving and so that the kids have some type of chance.
All right, before the floor is open, I want to remind everybody from last Sunday's message, be polite. If you're going to bring up any information, make sure you got proof to back it up. We don't want hearsay, we don't want gossip, we don't want rumor. We want actual, factual evidence. And for everybody else, also remember, Ed here is lucky to get 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. He works about 85% of his time on this stuff that he's been talking about. He researches, he makes instruments, he's got a lot of stuff that he's working on this. And he does not do paperwork for others. He will show you how to put things together, but you have to do it, especially affidavits. Affidavits have to be facts from the one who lived it.
Yep.
So all those who are calling and asking him to do this or do that, how about you get off your own ass and do some research and learn yourself? Ed is not a lawyer, is not an attorney, is not a professional of any kind, unless you want to consider a professional asshole. But that's because I trained him. I'm a master asshole. Anyways.
Hey, I was trained before you got there, but you were fine-tuning it.
Yeah, we know. You knew the Flintstones personally. Anyways. Basically, this is information we all gather together, get together, and let everybody know about it. But as it says, they wrote it, we quote it. We researched their words, their ways, their rules, regulations, codes, administrative crap, and everything like that. And we look for what the truth of the matter is, instead of this hearsay, oh, well, if you go up to a cop and say, I believe, or my opinion is, and you can berate them, they won't do anything. Have you seen some of these videos where the cop basically waits until a guy gets out off of a phone booth and then beats the crap out of him? They don't care. Because they are not there to protect us. So we don't want barracks lawyers. We don't want rumors. We don't want con artists or any of that. So if you're going to bring up stuff, make sure you've got some type of document, instrument, something certifiable, and it can't be your mental exam, because trust me, that's always certifiable. Effectively, something that can be proven, and if need be, could be taken to a Article 3 court.
Which there are Article 3 courts.
Yeah, fuck Article 1 courts. Anyways, I'm going to open it up, and you guys have fun.
All participants are unmuted.
Anybody would like to speak up yet?
Hey, Miss Ed.
Go ahead.
Might I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
Lawyers and judges have told me affidavits mean absolutely nothing. Okay? Instead of putting out what you believe, put out declaratory judgments. Make them answer. Okay? That's the fastest and easiest way for us to break this system. Is make them start answering, putting their word out instead of what we believe.
Right.
We can put all the affidavits together you want, and I've seen too many judges that take them and turn them over, but they can't turn over declaratory judgment. All right, you've seen my work.
Yes,
would
and
you
I'll
like
be
to
getting some of that posted this week.
Huh?
And some of that will be posted this week. And that's the one thing, too. I do plan on getting into some of the history of declaratory judgments and going in that direction starting next week. Because we need to start getting based on the way they do it.
Would you like a declaratory judgment on the constitutional rights?
Yeah. Yeah, you haven't sent that one to me. We were talking about that one.
Yeah, I'll get it to you later tonight or early tomorrow morning.
Okay. And that is the one thing, too. Yeah. You got to say, this gentleman is getting some stuff emailed to me that I'm emailing out. We'll get it up on the walls. There are some interesting educational reading stuff that he has done himself. And so we'll let people make their own decisions and their own ideas on it. But like I said, right now I am working on the structure for their rights. And that's the one thing that we need to question their rights. Yeah, we need to question their rights. And we need to go ahead.
Yep, like I said, I'll get this declaratory judgment out to you first thing tomorrow morning. Now, this is written for the state of Florida. Okay? There's a section in this that you're going to have to, whoever uses it is going to have to take the state of Florida rights out, or the state of Florida Constitution, and put their rights in there under their Constitution.
Right.
Don't go sending this out to Oregon for Florida Constitutional Bill of Rights sticking in it.
Well, and also, too, Florida Constitution Bill of Rights are totally different than Oregon, because Oregon actually has a treaty with the British government itself, and I don't believe Florida actually does.
No, we don't.
That's right. But we actually do on the West Coast here, Oregon, California, Washington, Idaho, Montana. We actually have a treaty with the British government exempting us from fishing tags, traveling fees, exempting us from, property taxes and rights, and it says it right there, and I have it by the original paperwork. So, I mean, but we're going to be fighting it. This one's going to be interesting to see the term that's going to come out of it. And, I can't predict the future, but, I mean, that's why they're going after me financially. They took all my money away, took my resources away from me, because they're literally right now trying to starve me out of my home. Because if I'm not, if I'm forced starved out of my place, they could try to take me out anywhere they want, but so long as I'm on my land, they can't do it. I know it, they know it, I know the system, I grew up around it. And anybody grew up around it, they know that the only way to take out the major fort is to take down the house. So, but yeah, we'll get that stuff put up. I got a couple things that I was working on, what you sent me earlier today, that I was putting together today and getting that finished up. And this is the point, getting these things out so that way, for your state, we're putting it out so you question your state attorney general's position, the sheriff's position, certifications. See, we want to go after them, and we want them to produce their employment status. And once we start getting their employment status produced, what are they going to do? Whine and cry? Probably.
Well, you you saw that commission that I sent you, right?
The which one?
The commission.
No, I haven't gone through that one yet.
Okay, the commission is in the name of the people. All right. That's what what you want is their commission. All right, their oath of office. All right, and their the third document. I can't think of what it is now.
I'll come to you, but the one thing your oath of office. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The certificate of competency to be a sheriff or a law enforcement.
Right.
That's the three documents you want right there. You'd be surprised what you can do with them. Now, the third thing you want to do is, in Florida, it's called the Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Affairs. They license all corporations. You want to go into that in your state and find out what is sitting on that land. All right? In Florida and a lot of other states, you're going to find out that these alleged police departments are, in fact, 501c charitable solicitation corporations.
Mm-hmm.
All right? That they don't want out.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Well, yeah, because the police departments are 501c3 church registration. You know, and people got to realize they're calling a police department a church.
Well, actually, no. In Florida, one of the police departments down here is a boys club, girls club, charitable solicitation corporation.
Well, yeah, no, I saw that. You sent me that a few months back.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, including the one with the Hollywood, the information from the Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, and this is the one thing that, you know, getting this information out, and yes, you know, we're still coming down to trying to determine a couple things here, which we are going to get resolved. But you know, putting this stuff together, going after, like I said, their commission is a good point. Knowing their standing of law enforcement and with their mental ability. Oh, and also, too, when you do file for the police department, the sheriff, or any law enforcement, you want a copy of their psychological evaluation. Every cop has to have one.
Yep.
Every cop has to have one. And so,
unfortunately, most of them are fake.
Oh, yeah, we know that. I mean, most of the cops on the street couldn't even be a cop, even with their own education understanding. And I had to use that word correctly. You know, because most of these people don't even know what the truth is. They don't do the research, and they just go with the follower says.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You know, that's the one thing that when Brent was alive, I can't remember her first name. She used to be the assessor here in Lincoln County. And she was assessor here, I don't know, probably 15 years before I really started getting involved in politics around here. And then the new system got in where they pumped in the federal shipping out of here. They put in the Marine status through the Coast Guard here, from here to Washington State. And it's when they started putting all this stuff in, they're taking away and trying to put this into definitely a foreign corporation. And a lot of these corporations here on the West Coast, at least in Oregon, not all of them were foreign corporations until the last 20 years. And we've actually had a 600% increase in government. You figure all your watershed councils, and all your watershed councils, at least I know personally in Oregon, just about every watershed council member was a graduate from Oregon State University or Portland University. There was no jobs. So they gave them government jobs and created the jobs out of the funding basis of watershed projects. And they got that money from the lottery funds. And that's where I keep going after people, that, they got $1 billion of lottery fund that is actually misplaced today in their system. Because I used to, till a few years back, I used to get a monthly sheet that used to be sent to me for all the counties in Lincoln County, that I could tell you exactly how much money was coming into each county and how much money was going out of each county. And they didn't like it when they found out I was able to get that one, because I put in a ballot measure, or not a ballot measure, I put in a Senate bill that I was trying to get a Senate bill that all 35%, or it was 35% or 25% of all income from the lottery went into a special retirement fund for lawful Oregonians only. You had to be born in Oregon, live in Oregon 20 years to qualify, or if you were born in Oregon and you turned 55 in Oregon, you got 100% divided between everybody that year who got a percentage, and it was only 40% of the net that the net that was passed out, and then the gross would rotate over. So you would always have 60% rotating every other year. So let's say collectively everybody got a paycheck or a retirement check or a dividend check for, let's say, $10,000 this year. In 2 years it would be $20,000, and it would go up each and every year by the deal. And everybody panicked because the state couldn't have control over the lottery funds to blow the money through their little pet projects and silent parties that they have that people don't want to talk about. And people don't realize your public employees spend a lot of money on private parties.
Oh, yeah.
And then please, you got to realize all your religious people out there, they spend a lot on hookers in those parties. But they're not religious when they go to the party. They're only religious when they go to church on Sunday. So it is an inquisitive double standard that we have in this country.
Really?
I've been around it, witnessed it. I've been a bodyguard in some of these parties that I went, ooh, interesting. And I sure wasn't going to get caught up in some. And I've been at, I won't get into it, but I know for a fact that sheriff deputies and judges and all these people snort cocaine and do all this shit in these parties. People don't realize how it really is, and if you talk outside of it, that's when you get blacklisted and blackballed. And I guess I'm sort of going through that myself. Go ahead. No, I thought you were going to say something. But this is the one thing. We've got the directions moving on. We've got to sit down and stop arguing about some of these things and start putting these things into practice. Let's get these things filed on these public servants, on the sheriff, on your local mayor. Even we could even file it on your local city council members, on their oath and the training they had to be a city council member. And they do have courses to go through. Every state does that. You have to go through certain courses to be in the city county council. I remember when they tried to force me to go through their British administrative course when I was elected for the local school committee, and I refused, and that's why they eliminated the local school committee, because I mentioned prior, the local school committee had lawful authority over the school board members and over the school board council, and had the authority over all the principals and administration. That's why the state of Oregon got it eliminated, because it was passed by the people itself, giving the local school committee that authority in 1972. And the people passed it at 68%. So and that's why they don't want it. See, your public servants today don't want it. And that's why it's so important to get back to honoring their oath of servitude. Otherwise, we got to make sure that we get these things filed so we end up losing their job positions, they get fired, and we eliminate their jobs completely. And if we can start eliminating some of these government jobs that have been increased 600%, just in 20 years, 600%. So we eliminate that 600%, oh my God, what is that going to do to the economy? Oh, that's going to make sure that local people are not starving. Local people can pay their bills. So, and then, like I said, we do have solutions we're working on. We are getting them out. I did get the one template out. I'll get these other ones out here in the next few days once I get them finished. I got most of them finished. I got to go over them to make sure that I'm satisfied that when I put it out, I'm putting my tag on it. So that's where I'm at with that one. You know, and that's the other point, too, is that I'm still doing some extensive research on a few other things that was brought up from a few other people. And so as soon as we get through that, we'll get those hurdles tied up here shortly, too. So then that way we can eliminate a few other conversations that we can make sure that the truth comes out one way or the other as we're working on it. But like I said, the best thing we got right now is going after these people in their employment, proving their job, proving their certification, proving their license to do the job. And you'll find out most of your cops don't have a license to even be a cop. And that's the one thing that needs to be filed with the city council members on your local police department.
Well,
Go ahead.
That's where that certification comes in. That is a license right there.
Say that again. The what?
That certification that I sent you.
Right.
That is your license. It's like if you go to a trade school and you learn to be an electrician, you get a certification.
Right.
Except we have to go get a license. They don't have to go get one. That is their license.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But again, some of these people don't have this.
No, that's what I'm saying. And then if they don't have it, they're terminated. That's by their own administrative rules, what I've read.
A lot of things are supposed to be going by their administrative rules. If you really get into the Administrative Procedures Act 1946, the subsequent amendments, these people are supposed to be sitting down with us, and we're all supposed to be giving an input into what their administrative rules are.
That's right.
But what's really going on here with the administrative courts is they're making the rules all the way from up to the Supreme Court.
Well, they're trying to allude to the general public. They're making the rules because you're allowed to have a comment. They open it up for public comment, and so people think that my comment is being recorded when your comment is just going, it's in this computer database over here, we'll deal with it. And which they don't deal with. So we're all seeing that one. So like I said, we'll get this one going because like I said, I've got the one that I will have out to the sheriff this week. I'm going to have one out to the governor, and I'm putting one together for the House and Senate members too to go out. Because like I said, in Oregon, we've got an interesting election coming up. You know, we really do. We got the terrorist Kate Brown that's running against what the heck's his last name? Trying to remember his last name. He's a doctor over in Eastern Oregon.
Newt Mueller.
Yeah, thank you. Newt Mueller. And so that is the one thing that, you know, he comes up with stuff, but, you know, I mean, he's a better choice than Brown right now, but I figure if we could get, once we get Brown out, we can work with him. He is a doctor, and I'll guarantee you he knows the birth certificate funding. That I do know he does know.
Well, the birth certificate funding is on the Immigration and Naturalization Act.
Yeah.
I gave you that, I think.
Say that again, you what?
That should be in the Immigration and Naturalization document I gave you.
Yeah, well, I haven't read that one yet.
The two codes on that created the birth certificates in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't specifically say birth certificates, But I was told by the right people that that's exactly what they meant.
Now, I want to read it. I'll get clarification on that, and we'll bring that up and get that clarified one night.
Well, the birth certificate is not a bond for the people. It's a bond in case you become a public charge. That's why you got to give that birth certificate over, or it's supposed to, when you go to public school. Okay? They build that account because now you're a public charge. Same thing if you go to jail.
Right.
Or anything, if you become a public charge. So they cash in that birth certificate, all right, and start using that money.
Right, that's how the jails are being paid off right now today.
That's one of the ways, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. I've done the research on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the point that we want to get this stuff out, so that way we stop the conflicts of interest that are going around. Because we got so many of these groups out there that are leading people in too many wrong directions. We've got a lot of people out there that are charging people anywhere from $100 to $5,000, and I think what was the other group? $7,500 are charging people to do the birth certificate, bonds, and all this stuff. And most of these people are ended up in jail.
Yeah.
You know? And if you know anything, have you ever heard of Winston Strout? That's another one. He's been convicted in Oregon for tax evasion, and he's still, I wouldn't say unfortunately, he keeps getting the postponement date that they're going to put him in jail. He got another postponement for another year on it, and he's fighting him on the charge. And what sort of stuns me was, if anybody doesn't know about Winston Strout or not, it was interesting because he was charging people for the seminars, and that's what they actually went after him for tax evasion, because he was making an income charging people for the corporation birth certificate, Social Security number, paperwork, and all this stuff, putting people into it. So they put him in. That's where they got him on the commercial. Because he was charging commercial.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the one thing. I mean, Winston has a lot of good information out there. You know, I haven't talked to Winston in a while, but I've talked to him in the past on different things. But Winston was one of those that I'm not giving any information unless you give me $500. And then a lot of people who did that ended up in jail alongside him. Some of the people are not alongside him right now, but they're in jail when he's not. And he's the one who educated them and basically got him convicted under IRS taxes court. Which, you know, read the IRS. It's a contract when you sign anything with the IRS. Everybody says, oh, Ed, you know, you could get money from the IRS if you fill this paperwork and do that paperwork. I don't want to be part of the foreign agents out of a foreign country. You know, if anybody knows the IRS is in Puerto Rico? Yeah. And so it's not an American structure of the IRS, and that's already been proven anyways.
Well, do you want to ask an interesting question? The IRS? Ask them are they licensed to do business in your state?
Well, not only that, we've got the information the IRS has never paid its own income tax in Washington, D.C., that it still owes $500 million on. So if they're not paying their own system to do the business themselves, you know, it's a major conflict.
Yep.
And so these are things that we are really living today. And so, like I said, start putting these things in. You know, we've got information that we've got to revamp on a couple of vaccine issues that we need to go back and force the issue on them now. They haven't responded. Now it's time to go after the attorneys that are trying to claim something. And once we start filing on those attorneys, they're going to run turn tail because they don't want the liability because it goes after their bar card. Remember, attorneys don't have bar licenses. They have a bar card. I've done the research of trying to find a lawful or legal bar license, and all of them have registered bar cards for every state.
Well, if you read the law, I haven't read all the states, but I've read several states. It does not say they're supposed to have a license.
That's right.
It says they're supposed to be authorized to practice law.
Right.
Now, if you get into, I sent you the 1951, I can't remember the executive order that created the UCMJ. It talks in the in that executive order about the only people allowed to practice in a military court are people authorized to practice. They have to be a member of the local bar.
Mm-hmm.
This goes all the way back to the beginning of this country.
And that's part of the Hale and Hinkle case.
Yep.
So, I mean, and that's the point when you read this stuff, figuring out what it is, how it works, knowing what our stance are. I
got a book that somebody gave me that's before the Civil War, I think 1820-something or 1830-something. All right? And it's got 3 types of law in it. They have civil, criminal, and militia law. Okay? And if you read the first 2, it doesn't say a damn thing about an attorney having to be in the courtroom. Okay?
Right.
But when you get that militia law, it does say that. You have to have a license, a bar attorney authorized to practice law in that territory or state. And I went through that, and I couldn't believe it.
No, I got you on that one. But we got another opinion on that one, so we'll get that one figured out. Because I'm working on that one too.
What's the other opinion?
Well, you got it right. There are 3 types of law. Yeah, and the other one doesn't say exactly. The military side has something else in it. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but I will get that out and sent out. I'll probably get it posted tonight on the YouTube channel once we get off, because then I can post on the YouTube channel once I get off. So, but this is the beauty part about it. People are starting to get together, starting to put these things together, writing these things out. And so, and then the other point is getting smoothed out, because some of us do have different opinions or knowledge or factual information that contradicts one another or convolutes one another. And so that's the other point of putting these things out to the sheriff and the mayors and the city council. So then that way we want their words to speak. We want them to speak. We don't want to put our opinions or us to speak. We want them to speak for us with their knowledge.
That's why I push asking questions. All right, give them enough rope enough. This is they'll hang themselves.
Oh yeah. Was somebody else trying to say something?
Yeah, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to read this out of Byrne, Military Law Naval Institute Press. This is Chapter 9, the Trial and Defense Counsel. The same standards of performance, conduct, and ethics that apply to a certified military lawyer are required of a detailed non-lawyer counsel.
Mm-hmm.
So over and over again it talks about non-lawyer counsel.
Right.
You don't have to be a attorney in the Article 3 court, Admiralty Maritime Court. And it makes it very clear. And I'll read it again. The same standards of performance, conduct, and ethics that apply to a certified military lawyer are required of a detailed non-lawyer counsel. In other words, if you're learned in the law, you qualify. You don't have to be a certified attorney.
And then what book was that you were referencing it from?
This is Byrne, Military Law, Naval Institute Press. This is Chapter 9, the Trial and Defense Counsel.
Yeah, I got to get that pulled up, and we'll get that put up on the walls so people can see that too. Because I got a couple that I dug up that I haven't brought up, but I wanted to go through them completely before I spoke, because I want to make sure when I speak on these a couple things that I found, it's going to be interesting when when I go through it, and if it is saying what it's saying, there's another turn that's interesting with it all. So, but that's the whole point is that we know that we need to start filing on these public servants, going after them. And I'm going to be going heavily after the Oregon State House and Senate on the rights to travel coming up. I'm going after them every senator too, because I sent them one. I've got some responses from some, but a lot of these senators and House of Representatives are passing the buck, going, well, it's your state representative, it's your state your state senator, and it's like, wait a minute. And they've broken down your states so that way, and if you look at your state, when you go to your state and type in compared to the way it was even 10 years ago, you could type in a public servant and you got all their information, and today you type in a public servant, if you're not in their zip code, you're not allowed to speak to them. So they've already divided up the country on this by statute and codes. And so it's putting the rest of that together of the excuses that are coming up, getting away with that one. So it's another project to work on and get that information out. But we are proceeding forward with this stuff. We are getting more and more information, putting these things together, getting them out together. And so that's the main thing. It's getting it out, and we can start getting these things out, get the right questions asked, and we just put the heat on them. And then some of these questions, when we do like when I do it to the House and Senate, I'm sending it out to the news media too. We know that a lot of news media in the West Coast and Oregon is definitely paid by the Democratic influence. They know it. I had one news reporter told me 2.5 months ago, if they would actually write what I filed and what I'm going after the county on, they said they would lose their job and the state of Oregon would pull their business license. So they wouldn't run the story because they were afraid to be unemployed. And that's what the owner of the newspaper told me. So it's sad when these people we've got it where, honor is very, very relaxed and spongy, I would say. The sponge going, whoever at the time is doing something, how it's maneuvering for one group or another. And it would be nice once we stop doing this, or making sure that, that we have public servants that are honoring the service of duty. And if not, that's what I'm saying. We need to just start putting these things in and making sure that some of these agencies get terminated. Trump put in an administrative deal into the Republican Party a couple of weeks ago, going after a straight 30% reduction straight across the board of all basically local and county agencies like watershed projects and these stuff that claim that they're out protecting our waterways when they're not. They're just making a living off of it themselves and restricting us for their own personal gain. And it's sad because, like the state of Oregon, I mean, I started fishing tournaments 25, 30 years ago. Another guy started it back in the 70s, and he stopped doing them in the 80s. I started picking them up in late 89, and I was running them until here in Lincoln County and partially around the state until basically 2000, and then 2004, after I proved all the fraud that ODF and W did to the people, the state of Oregon picked up, and now they're doing fishing tournaments all around the state for the children, and their requirements, which I've talked to a couple of the directors on their programs, and they said, well, you're telling the kids if they don't have a license, they can't eat. And the lady's going, Ed, come on, you know me. He said, yeah, I know you. I've known her for 15 years. She goes, well, Ed, just between me and you, I'm not going to sit there and ask everybody for their license when they come here. Well, you're not, but if that state trooper's around, he's going to do it. They pass the buck off like that amongst each other very easily and quickly amongst each other. And so they think that they have more rights instead of privileges, and they're the ones with the privilege. So anyhow, anybody else got anything else they'd like to add in? Okay, with that, nobody's got anything to add in. Why don't we call it an evening? We'll get some more information. I'll get this other stuff out tomorrow night. Because I should have one of the deal I sent to the county should hopefully be up tomorrow night, because we're going to set up a page for that, for, you know, their commissions and all this stuff. We'll set up a page for each county and each structure that way. So when we start getting them, we can post them. So then that way, when people need them, at least here on the West Coast in Oregon, we've got a base where we can go a background check to find out if they're certified, registered, filed, whatever. And the one thing, too, we need to make sure that we get their public safety certificates copied from law enforcement training out of Salem. So that's the project that we're working on. I will have more printed up this week. I'll have a couple of people will run over it this week and make sure it's comfortable, and then that way I can put my autograph on it and start getting these things out. And we can start asking the serious and heavy questions. I plan on doing that with the mayor and city council of my town. I do plan on putting a couple questions to several of the police chiefs in the communities on uniform decorations. So that's the other thing I will be putting together later on this week too, and get those out. So if anybody's got nothing else at this point to add in or bring in, why don't we just call it a night? With that, I'll say, may the Great Spirit and Mother Earth bless you, the Creator look over you, and with that, that we start producing to protect the bloodline of this country. And by the way, for those who are not catching on, ABC and NBC has questioned publicly on their program recently too, questioning the thought of, is there a bloodline that we need to be concerned about in the country? So that was interesting when that was brought up a couple of days ago, dealing with the immigration that is going off that in New Mexico, California, the one in Idaho, and the other immigration, and well, we said Texas. What was the other state? I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's another state that was brought up in that, dealing with the senator, and I'm dealing with one of the senators with my bank account and stuff, and basically, Senator, what the heck, Merkley, his attorney is saying that these agencies could do anything they want. So that's why it's so apparent to start putting these letters out and questioning their employment. So with that, I will say good evening. We'll talk tomorrow night, and we'll get some of these structures that are going to be out there so you can only print them, read them, and use them for public information.
All participants are muted.
Bueller. 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 That's the name,
Yeah.
not Mueller, not Bueller. It's
Yeah, it's Bueller.
Yeah, but you stated Mueller.
Oh, did I say? No, because he reminds me of Bueller. That what the hell was that movie? Oh,
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Yeah.
Day Off. Yeah.
Right. So, all right. Here's the thing. We are not attorneys. We are not judges. We are not lawyers. We are not anything in the legal aspect. We do use their legal stuff, their words, to make our cases, our rights, our standpoints, whatever you want to call them.
Don't forget they're copyrighted.
Yep, and there's a lot of them that are copyrighted, so we cannot actually use them. We use the old ones, the ones that are not copyrighted. Now, here's the other aspect. We're not professionals. So anything you learn here, you take full liability for anything you learn and use here. Ed does not take liability. I do not take liability, and I'm pretty sure even Southern and the others who have talked on here do not take liability because they don't want you to go half-assed running up to the judge going, I got this, and the judge throws you into prison for 13 years, and then you claim that they told you to do it. No. You take liability for your own actions. We do not take any liability. And as you, Ed, just a bit of information, my daughter, almost 5 weeks old, when you were talking, is there a bloodline that we should be worried about? My wife tells me she gave a very evil grin. So I'm thinking
I expected that.
She actually is following in her papa's footsteps. So anyways, guys, it is June 23rd, 2018. It's been a great show. Everybody was polite. Thank you very much, everybody. And, well, if you want, jump in on the after show. That'll probably happen for a little bit. We're not going to televise it, but we will be on here. And Ed should take time and not just jump off like he does regularly to actually talk to people who are too shy or embarrassed to get on the show. So it is June 23rd, 2018. It is a Saturday, and it is 7:14 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you tomorrow with Education with Ed.